From the time I had not lost, I could take the front and back.
Typically, you don't have to weld on these things when you get them from us. The welding's all done that really needs to be done. This is a little bit different because we're putting this Yamaha engine on here that makes an awful lot of power and torque and thrust and all that stuff. So we're just kind of beefing up the front end just a little bit, getting a little more diagonal bracing in here. But like I say, normally you don't have to do that. I'm not exactly sure where we finished off on our last video, but I got the doublers in, the ends of the spars here. They're the chromoly pieces inside, so you're not relying just on the strength of the aluminum. Spreads that load way out. And got my root ribs in, and the butt ribs. I got them all. I decided what holes I want. Where this one's just to lose weight. This is for losing weight and seeing the sight tube. And then the fuel comes out of the tank right here. The sight tube comes up to here. So I got those all cut out and matching on my butt ribs here. So that's done. That's all set. All epoxied in, and I was down here about 4 o'clock this morning because I couldn't sleep anyway, putting the fuel tanks in. And they mount on these angles here that they have on there's 4 of them, 2 in front, 2 in back, and they have a corresponding angle that you put in here on the spars. And the trick is just to get them things in exactly the right spot, the right height, so they're flat. You want to, wherever that piece is flat on the metal, it's not flat anywhere, but where it's right against it, that's where you want your rivet so it doesn't try to rock it one way or the other. So that's an important thing. And we rivet these on with stainless steel rivets and epoxy them with the Hysol. But the easiest way to do this is with lots of clamps. You need some small C-clamps and then some bigger ones to hold the angle onto the spar. Anyhow, you just take your time on that, and you're in and out with the tank several times, but it's worth taking your time. Then the last thing, we'll put nut plates on the bottom, 2 nut plates on each one. The tanks are ready to go in. Still have to put a whole bunch of little nut plates around the perimeter of it. There's an aluminum piece that goes on the front, and then on the back it'll be on the trailing edge of the wing. And there's a whole bunch of nut plates you put all the way around the hole for the aluminum cover that will eventually cover this tank. And speaking of that, one thing that's important I think is important when you're putting the tank in, is don't let any part of it other than the fuel cap, which you cut a hole for that, stick up above these ribs. Because if it does, and you try to put that aluminum cover over the top, it's a booger. But there's room. It's not so thick that you have to do that. Just be careful and don't do it, and you'll be really glad when you put the cover on the top. I weld this shut. You can weld it shut or put a plug in it or use it. The reason for it is the stock header tank is real small, and if you're descending for an extended time and you're low on fuel, normally the fuel mostly comes out the back, but if you're going down, you don't have a whole lot of gas in there, it's not going to be drawing any gas, and your little bitty header tank can run out and your engine quits. So we have a 5-gallon header tank, so that's not an issue. So I just don't use this plug. Like I say, I either plug it. If I do plug it, I would use one that you use an Allen wrench, and then I would put a corresponding hole in these ribs so that if I ever have a leak, it's not a problem to get at it. I don't have to pull the whole fuel tank out just to check that plug. You can just go right through that hole, because you want to get rid of weight anyway. My way of thinking right now is I want to get this thing powder coated pretty soon. So I'm trying to get the things done. I get sidetracked, like putting tanks in. I didn't need to do that, but to get powder coated. But I really do want to get it down to get powder coated, and things like these lift strut attach brackets, they need coated. We're getting everything done on the fuselage that I think in the next day or two we can get this thing to powder coat. But we'll pull the wings off. We'll just set them on the sawhorses for now, but pretty soon we'll be putting them on rotators to do all kinds of work to them. More little bitty thing we're doing is putting some little tabs in here to mount my nitrogen bottle, because I like to inflate and deflate my shock depending on what the wind's doing for stoll competition. So that's all we're doing here is adding a couple more little tabs to mount that, make it easy.
How close are you to powder coat things?
Oh, I think we're real close. Like a day away. Day or two. Okay, that'd be good to get all this stuff down there before I head out. And then if you get it done, Josh can come pick it up, and yeah, that'd be good. They're busy.
Powder coat?
Yeah, you can't even do it till after the first of the year. I guess we might do more wing work than we were thinking. All right, well, so I got to kind of rethink here. No big hurry to get it to powder coat because you can't do it for a while. What's that?
Oh, you said you're changing the shape of them?
Yeah, this is one thing that we do. Here's one thing that I do on my airplanes and make them available for other people too when they're building their Highlanders. This is the shape, the normal leading edge shape of the aileron and the flaps. And it works great on the flaps, and it's okay on the ailerons, but this is a better shape. So, well, it's kind of hard to hold it up here, but so I'll have to cut that off where I have that line, all the front of the ribs here cut up like that, and then it gets this shape. And what that does when you're working your aileron, you want to bring the back of the aileron up. Well, that gets down into the wind right under the wing immediately. That point there gets right into the airstream, so it's in front of the pivot, so it's pushing down while you're lifting it up, and it just really helps you out. Makes the ailerons lighter and quicker. So I'm gonna trim all those off like that. Start getting these put on. I have a little sawzall, probably work really nice. Yeah, they saw pretty easy. So you just cut them off all like that, and then that new edge will go on there. And I like to put a little piece of filler right in there too, because you don't want that ever to come up like that. You want that to be flat all the way across to the very front. So I'll put a little piece of this cap strip up there too, so it can't ever happen. And then we'll put like a countersunk rivet just like we do on the trailing edge of the wing, and back here on the trailing edge of these two, and some Hysol, and it'll be great. When somebody buys these aileron edges from us, we just have the little instruction sheet. They're very simple, and that tells you everything you need. It's to scale, so there's your little pattern right there for what you cut off the front of these things. Very easy to do. I'm just working on putting the trailing edges on my ailerons. I start out just sliding the thing on there and cutting it to length. And then I like to measure from the spar to the back of the aileron, to the back of the trailing edge there, and mark it right there on every rib. I mark it all. And then I'll drill off to one side a little, the little bitty holes, what are they, 3/32, whatever, on all of them. And then when I turn it over, I make sure and go to the other side of the rib to drill from this side, because you don't want to be hitting them into each other. It doesn't work at all. So always go to the other side when on the other side, so they're offset. And then you countersink them This one here I've got a little farther along. I've got it drilled and countersunk. So it's ready to fasten on there. And when I do that, one little thing you want to make sure you do, if all that's holding that is that rivet, when you go to shrink the fabric, it'll pull that every time and you'll get a real nasty wrinkle right here. Because when that fabric shrinks, it's super powerful. I mean, it's crazy how hard it'll pull. So the trick is, you can't, as you can see on the end here, you can't get this all the way down solid. It's just not the way it works, because that's too thick. So you want to make sure you have Hysol in there. When you rivet that on, make sure you Hysol it anyway, but you want to make sure you have enough in there that when that fabric goes pulling on that, it can't move it. Because I've still had it happen. I know about it and I'm careful about it, and I still have one or two of them, it seems like, every time I build a plane. So you can't be too careful about it. And this applies for all trailing edges. The ailerons, flaps, the wings, it doesn't matter, all of them. They'll all do that if you don't make sure and have Hysol in there, so it just can't. All right, I'll finish drilling this one and get a couple of them ready. I might do my flaps while I'm at it too, and mix up some Hysol. That's the other thing, is mixing up Hysol. You don't want to waste it, so it's always a challenge to mix up the right amount. I like to have something else I can go use it on if I have mixed up a little too much, like welding the little angles in the wings by the drag links and to the spars. Just something so that I can use it up and not waste it. Well, I've got a way that works for me doing this Hysol. I made several of these things, and it'd be really difficult to start out with this long one because it's just not stable. So I make this little short one, goes in here. This is pretty crude, but it works. Put my clamp on there, get my baggie. I use a lot of baggies. And you stick that in there and squeeze the Hysol in there. I try to squeeze it down in the corner because that's where I'm going to want it, is down in that corner. I'm going to need quite a bit of it. And I'll stop about there. So then I just kind of try to wipe it off right down there in the bag. So see, as that one gets where that doesn't reach anymore, I'll put the next size in there and keep until I use it all up. Now I just take the bag. If I kept it over in the corner good, all I have to do now is just roll it, twist it up here, and put a piece of tape on it. Very scientific. And then you just knead it. You just mix it up. This takes a little bit, minute or two. But it works easy. You know, I got a bunch of those mixing tips, but it takes a lot of pressure, more than you can do with one of those, to push it through all them little mixers in there. So, and then plus I mix it up so many times during the day that I'd probably waste half of it just in those tubes. So this works good for us. Then when I get it, I still have some more mixing to do, but when I do get it all mixed up, I just pinch the corner like that and take my scissors and cut it off whatever size I want it to be, and then you just, a little applicator, you just squeeze it right out of the tube, right out of the baggie. I got a minute or two of mixing.
So what we're doing here is grinding all of the raised areas where the fabric's going to go over, where you'll see the weld through the fabric. The welds on here are actually beautiful welds. Just occasionally they rise just above the portion, and some of that you can't control, where the fabric's going to lay over it, and then you'll see a dent in that. And Steve's particular about that because he's so particular about everything. So the fabric can't lay over the top of that and have a bump on it, so it's got to look smooth as it comes over there. But that's why he's a Lindy champion, I guess.
So I'll just cut the tip of that off. And this is when it starts getting messy, but I got to get this stuff squeezed down in here. And this is where it's tricky and hard to really get it down in there like it needs to be. So now I'll just go to putting this on here. Hope I don't make too much of a mess. I showed you on our pattern that we send you the instructions, the angle to cut these ribs off, to cut all your ribs off. And you would think that you'd want to cut your false ribs off just the same, because they're just the same on the front. But don't. There's a way you can do it better. If you take your leading edge material on there, on one of the ribs that's got your spacer in there that's holding it nice and straight where it goes, set one of these ribs up, these little false ribs up there, and where it would be like the other rib, you'd have the space there too, but you can use it to fill that space. Just rotate it a little bit and then mark it and cut them all off like that. And now it's going to support this edge and this edge. Just by doing that little tiny easy thing, it'll just make it that much more supported and keeping that point down there where it's flat like it really needs to be. And this was something too that made it easy for me, is put the thing, my aileron, in that position, bolt it there, clamp it there, I mean, because I could sit these on there with my Hysol and they'd stay. They didn't want to just fall off. So the way I do it is I have it marked where they all go. Like right here is a hinge, so I want one right by that. I'm gonna want one out in the middle between each one. So I know I have them marked and scuffed up where they go. Hysol them, put them down on there, and then just very carefully take your leading edge and put it over them, and they'll dry exactly where they go. And then once you get it like that too, then you can take it loose and just carefully turn it over, and now you can see those little ribs. And if any of them's like crooked, just take a pair of needle nose pliers and you can just straighten them up and get them exactly where they go. Then the last thing, well actually before I took that off, I took some of those ball bungee cords and put around it. That kept that pulled up nicely before taking it loose from the bench and straightening them. So that works really good. You don't have to notch them out much either for the controls. I had already taken this aileron to the back of my wing and marked exactly where my hinges were going to go, because you know they go straight off the back of the ribs. You figure out what ribs they go on. Look, the book tells you what rib they go on, and they go just dead straight behind the middle of that rib. So I have that all marked too. That way I can get my leading edges cut off, because the notches cut out. I do it in steps like that because I don't want this on there yet permanently. Like you can't get at a lot of the holes to to rivet on your control arms, your hinges and stuff with your leading edge on. So don't get in any big hurry about getting it permanently on. Well, that's just a couple other little easy things that make it go a lot better if you know. I like to make sure and put two of their little false ribs where my metal meets, so both ends have a support there. I don't want an end just hanging out in space. I want it supported right on the joint.
I must apologize. I lied in the last video when I said Steve steals my Sharpies. Steve has never stolen a Sharpie in his life.
Yeah, right. Life.
I apologize from the bottom of my heart. I wanted to clear my conscience.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
wanted to clear my conscience. I'm sorry.
Do you feel better now?
I feel better now.
That's good.
Thank you. Want a hug?
That's good. Yeah.
I feel better.